There you go. I beat you to it, Deborah. Welcome to part 2 of discussion of the Sacred Art of Loving Kindness by Rabbi Rami Shapiro. And I'm going to start with the good news tonight. The good news is that Rabbi Rami is going to join us on December 15th, which I figured that would be coming to a conclusion. I'm hoping maybe we'll end the following week. Maybe we'll adjust it by a week if it looks like we're going to end earlier. But with all the digressions that I'm famous for, who knows? Maybe this will go until Purim. But he's coming on the 15th, and I'm very excited because I've never met him, and we've never spoken, and yet he is one of my rabbis for sure. He is one of my teachers, as I shared with you, that how important this book was to me and still is to me. And I shared that with Mark Kronish, who was with us this afternoon for meditation. And he pulled out a copy of Minyan, which is yet another book of Reb Rami's, where he talks about making community. And I might take a look at that as something we might want to delve into after this one. So welcome, everybody. On the good ship Moshe, we are ready for a liftoff here. Speaking of Shatner, right? I wonder what they said, when they were about to take off. But let's turn to the liturgy that we are focusing on in the discussion on this book, and that's not the page I want. I want the page before. Thank you. And there it is right now. So these words, just as a quick review, as we recall that they are the words that divinity reveals to Moshe when Moshe asks to let me see your face. And of course, God says, no one can see my face and live, but I will place you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll have all my goodness pass before you. I don't know if they used this melody as the words went by. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanu, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed L'Alafim, Nosei Hamon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanu, Erech Apayim Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed L'Alafim, Nosei Hamon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakei. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanu, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed L'Alafim, Nosei Hamon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakei. And turning to the unpacking of these words, Adonai, Adonai, curious that God's name is repeated. And of course, the rabbis, including Reb Rami, has something to say about that. So let's review this, a little review from last week. The first Adonai is all about realizing the divinity of self, of seeing Yud He Vav He inscribed in ourselves. The second Yud He Vav He is realizing the divinity of the other, so that when we look at each other, we see B'Tselem Elohim inscribed in each other as well. Then the word El, one of God's names, cultivating still misspelled creativity. Rachum, Rechem, a woman's womb, the seed of compassion, engendering compassion. So you'll notice that Reb Rami, what he's doing here, he is adding the letters ing. What is that when we do that in English? It is somebody help me?
A gerund.
A gerund, thank you. It is a gerund. And so what he's doing is understanding this and unpacking this as divinity in action. Then chanun. Chen is the word for grace. And he unpacks it as finding grace. In other words, looking around us, not just at others in the world, but looking at our own lives and seeing how sometimes that which has not necessarily been earned find a way into our lives, because as we might say that God loves us. Erech Apayim, as I forget who it was last week, said it's like long-faced, really. But in this context, slow to anger, acting with equanimity. Rav Chesed, a lot of kindness. Creating kindness, there's the gerund. Emet, faithfulness, bringing forth truth. And remember that emet, if you look at the word, it's right here, I'll outline it. Can I do that? I'm not sure I can do that. Okay, never mind. But here's my cursor. Can you see the cursor? No, okay. But faithfulness, next to faithfulness, you have emet. And emet is made up of the first letter of the aleph-bet, followed by the middle letter, followed by the last letter. So in other words, it's everything from aleph to taf, right, in there. And so bringing forth truth is seeing everything, the wholeness, the totality of everything, and holding that as, and having faith that it has something to teach us. Notzir chesed, extending kindness, or as he says, preserving kindness. Nosei avon, forgiving transgression, forgiving iniquity. V'fesha, forgiving willfulness, something that we do that is a willful sin, whatever your understanding of sin is. And then v'chata'a, forgiving error. And last but not least, v'dakeh. Again, it's misspelled, so I forgot to go back over this. Cleansing yourself of delusion. In other words, cleaning off all of the schmutz from your front window so that you can see clearly out and others can see you clearly as well. All righty. So before we dive into from where we left off, which is around page 8, I believe. Any questions or reflections from last week that any of you want to offer? And if you're here for the first time, I think, Steve, you weren't with us last week. Welcome, and you'll quickly catch up. And we'll be reading right out of the book for those of you who don't have it or don't have it yet. Anything come up for you during the week? Okay, well, I can tell you that, yeah, Mary Rita.
What came up for me is just the image of God, and then the outflow of the action of that, of the outflow of loving kindness. And so often I just found myself saying, and you're the image of, I found myself saying it today, you're the image of God, and you're the image of God, and that we are all like letting loving kindness flow. That has just stayed with me. I shared with it as I was co-leading Shaharit this morning. I think if there's nothing I take from that book, it's that.
Beautiful.
And how that will look in my own uniqueness.
Yeah, and what you're doing is what Rami gets to in this chapter, based upon that lovely legend that each of us has an angel in front of us who are declaring, make way for the image and likeness of God, right? This is so delicious, isn't it? Roxanne, welcome, and Carol Ann too, Meira. If we lived that way, wow. All right, so thank you for offering that. Anybody else? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I reacted to in the introduction. Hang on a second. Let me pull it back up again. I made some notes. Yeah. Talking about the silence is the language of God and all else is poor translation.
Yeah.
I reminded of my first Hebrew class with Dr. Garfine at Baltimore Hebrew University, where she said, before you start learning anything else about biblical Hebrew, you need to learn that all translation is opinion. And that's really stood me well over the years. So that brought back a very fond memory of learning to appreciate how you have to go to the original and look at all the nuance and not just take the words in another language.
Yeah, that's a great observation. All of translation is opinion, is commentary, really, because you can't translate something without without having some kind of bent. I mean, if you compare, Matthew Fox to what's his name? Oh gosh, his name's going out. Who does all the Torah commentary, Torah commentaries? Daniel. I'm looking at my bookshelf, but I can't find my glasses. What are some? Robert Alter, right? If you compare the two, you're going to find vastly different translations. Then, of course, if you're looking at things like Psalms, if you look at Reb Zalman's, for instance, of blessed memory, you're going to figure he doesn't even attempt to translate, right? But that's a wonderful thing to keep our to keep our minds wrapped around, that we should always have actually several different Tanakhs in front of us. When you're looking at and it doesn't just have to be a Jewish translation, different translations. So we can see, first of all, the opinion, as you put it, Stephen, of the writer, or the commentary of the writer, and also, sometimes, I think that people are affected by the midrashim that they've read, and that they know, and what they bring to a translation. Okie doke. Judy Young is not here, but she would be delighted in the fact that I was going to begin today by reviewing and adding on to the concept of Ratz v'shov that we started unpacking last week. And I did a little study about that today, because I find it fascinating, and I found something that I never thought of before, and I hope you find this as fascinating as I do. So I'm going to turn to back to the page on Ratz v'shov. So just so this is a review. And actually, before I read that, and let me see, spotlight myself here. There we go. The next page, just so you know where this term comes from. Ratz v'shov, achayot Ratz v'shov b'mar'eh havazak. So this is in Ezekiel's vision of the chariot, right? And you've got all those totally fascinating, mind-blowing creatures, right? And he says that dashing to and fro, Ratz v'shov, among the creatures was something that looked like flares. What came to me when I read this, reread this today, was the possibility. Now remember, he was as charged as one could possibly be, this prophet, with the Ruach HaKodesh, with the Holy Spirit. And in seeing this vision, I'm seeing like, the way a pinball machine go bop, 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 things bounce off of each other? Or if you, like in an electrical storm, or in, or anything where electricity bounces from one thing to the next, that there's an electrical charge in divinity that sends its unique aspect or characteristic, or one of its spherot, charging and interacting with all the other ones, which is all those, what those lines are in the spherot, in the tree, in the Eitz Chaim, right? And so while they're interacting, they are like, that sound. Sometimes it's not a good sound when something gets stuck into an electrical socket. But so this is Ezekiel's vision of running to and fro. Now, this is also borrowed later on. I don't know if it's borrowed or not, but it is used by the Kabbalists and by the mystics to teach us something else. All right. So there is either isness or there is notness. There's either yesh or there is ein sof, meaning there, yesh means there is, like an isness. Like in the song we often sing on Shabbos morning, what is this aliveness that I am, right? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? So the aliveness, the yeshut is all that is with with these currents of electricity of aliveness interacting with each other and causing the connectedness between us all, okay? Now that is in contrast to what's called bitul hanefesh. So bitul hanefesh literally means like the cancellation or of our selfhood. So for instance, for those of us who have a chanting practice or a meditation practice or a walking practice for that matter, and we lose ourselves in that practice. But at the same time, we find ourselves perhaps in atzilut, closeness to divinity. What happens there in Chassidut is called the nullification of that which is, right? And so there is no separation between anything. There just is pure isness of which we are a part, and we don't notice any separation. Now, this quote is from Reb Nachman of Breslov, but we're going to go further into it at the bottom on the next page. One cannot survive on the level of complete nullification to divinity, because on that level he has no selfhood separate from Yud Hey Vav Hey, right? So in other words, when we are in dvekut or dvekus, in Yiddish, when we're in dvekut, we have attached ourselves to the utmost. There is no me and you. There's just that which is. Right? But we can't, we can't go shopping in that state, and we shouldn't be driving a car. All right. And so we must return. You see in quotation mark, we must return to this world. That is the shuv part. Now, the word shuv has the shurish as the same as what word? Teshuvah, to return, right? Returning to what? Returning to this world in this case, but still connected to divinity. All right, so imagine that we've just been in an amazing chanting service, or just it's part of an amazing chant. So Reb Shefa reminds us this all the time, that after the chant comes the silence, right? Carolyn, you can speak to this, I'm sure. And then within the silence, we are invited into discernment from which comes integration of whatever we experienced in the chant. How am I doing, Carol? Okay, feel free to unmute yourself and add. So that is returning in order to reveal to his mind what came during the meditation or the chant or the walk. So, because we can't live 24/7 on the mountain like the guru, we must return to this world, but having learned something and remember something. At first, at the time of cleaving, running to, the knowledge was annulled. We run to divinity, and in that state, all is one. Adonai Echad. There is no other. It's before divinity, before God begins to separate. Havdil in Bereshit, right? In the first book of the Torah. But when he returns to his existence, he returns to his mind. And when he returns to his mind, then he knows the unity of the infinite. In other words, now, after having experienced Adonai Echad, after having experienced the Bitul HaNefesh, we now intellectually know that was real. That was a real experience. I want to stop for a second because it's going to get a little bit more heady, but I hope a little bit more useful in the next passage from Reb Nachman. Anybody? Have I confused you yet? Anybody? Yeah, Roxanne.
This reminds me of the part where God says, and you cannot see me and live meaning existence. And if you really saw God, you wouldn't be existing, so you wouldn't really see. And if you didn't see, then you'd have your separate existence. So God figures out this really cool way for you to exist and know something about God.
What a beautiful, beautiful connection to the 13 attributes, to the self-revelation of Hashem, because as you say, no one can see me and live. And so what wouldn't just be Tul HaNefesh as far as Moshe is concerned, it'd be Tul HaYesh. I mean, he would be annihilated, like you're saying, right?
Or annihilated, like, now I don't mean like dead. I mean his isness would be, negated, because he'd be one with God if he saw God.
What I'm saying is yes and both, because there's the wonderful midrash about all of Israel hearing the in Aleph for Anochi at the beginning of the Ten Commandments, the Seret HaDibrot, and being shot back 10 miles, and they die. That's a different. So that's one. Or one midrash is that everyone dies and is brought back to life. So we can understand it in both ways, that it's a real death, as if we would be all of a sudden standing next to the sun, and we would be annihilated. There would be nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, that is a wow, isn't it? Okay, so now fasten your seatbelts, because here comes the next part of Reb Nachman. This has to do with prayer. This is Likutei HaMaharan. This is what we see. So לפעמים נתלהב אדם בתוך התפילה. During the time, sometimes during his prayer, a person is on fire. Right? This is translated become uninspired, but what it really means is that the person is afire, right? That it ignited, actually, might be a better unpacking of it. And Scott, if you've got another idea, let me know. So this is what's happening when we pray. The person becomes inspired to the point that they're afire. Va'omer kama tevot b'hitlahavut gadol. He says a couple of words with tremendous fervor, those words come out, and those words are on fire. Zeh b'chemlat Hashem alav. This is due to God's compassion for him. And my understanding, one of my understandings of this is that if we get that close, we could be consumed and literally not be able to come back. For those of you who are familiar with the four who went to paradise, right? Sheniftach lo or ve'ein sof beheir lo. So what happens when we pray? We get ignited and we're on fire, and the light of eternity, of Ein Sof, of that which is without end, of Yud He Vav He, that which was, is, and will be, has been opened to him and shines for him. So there's a light that shines on us and through us and for us, and does not consume us because of God's rachamim. Now, continuing. When a person sees this radiance, his soul is instantly ignited in great devotion, so that he attaches himself to the light of Ein Sof. So here in prayer, we have lost ourselves and found ourselves. I like to think of it that way. We have found ourselves even though we are no longer aware of ourselves. And to the degree that Ein Sof is revealed, commensurate with the number of words that have been opened and begin to radiate. So the more we pray, the greater this light for us and within us. He recites all these words with great devotion, with a surrender of self, and with a negation of all his senses. Then during the time he's negated in Ein Sof, he is in a state of, and no man knows, so that he himself is unaware of his own existence. We all have that experience. That's the experience of, the awesomeness of standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, of the moment of childbirth, of the moment when, a heart just gets lifted by some act of kindness that we witness, or sometimes that we do. All right, here it comes back. We're coming in for landing. We're at Ratz Vashov. Aval, zot habechina tzarich lihiyot ratzo vashov, kedei sheyitkayem yeshuto. But this must be in the aspect of running and returning in order to preserve his soul within him. Why? Because his soul might fly away. And we wouldn't want that to happen, because then our soul would be separated from our bodies and we wouldn't be able to return to it. This is an intense teaching. So this idea of running and returning is, we're running to be in relationship with divinity, and then we're returning because we must, in order to live in this world of duality. Make sense? Oh, well, I don't know if it makes sense, but I want to encourage you all, the next time you meditate, the next time you go for a walk, the next time you pray, the next time you sit in silence, set this as an intention, Ratz Vashov, that you're running towards something that you're yearning for, knowing that when the bell goes off, or when you reach your destination, or when the chant comes to an end, you're going to return, and in the silence, your mind is going to know what your heart knew during the experience. Welcome, Elliot. Yeah, please, Carol, I was hoping you were going to add something.
What I'm going to add is that that's what chanting does. The long chant, the wild chant, the letting go chant, the chanting with your lips aflame, takes you out of yourself and into another place. And then in the silence, like Reb Shefa says, that's when you can experience the vibrations of the aliveness and come back to yourself, but with something new, with something special, with knowing that you were out there. That's all.
Thank you so much, Carol. From what you said, I'm going to make a connection to this week's Torah portion, which is Lech Lecha, right? So somebody give us an understanding of Lech Lecha. God says to Abraham, this is Abraham's, enter Abraham, stage right. And what does God say to Abraham? Anybody in your own words? Deborah?
Leave your home and leave the land that you're familiar with and go out, and I will make you a great nation.
Okay.
And come back to yourself. Go out to yourself.
Yeah. So Lech Lecha, and I'll be touching on this on Shabbos morning. The Torah could have just said Lech, like go, go, get out, from the land that you were born, your native land, your birthplace, your father's house. But it says Lech Lecha. And as Carol pointing out, one understanding is to go to yourself. In other words, look inside, listen to the still, and trust in that still small voice that you are hearing. Now, I'm going to go even further now, which is, why do you have to leave your birthplace, your native land, your father's house, in order for the blessings to be to manifest themselves? What is that about? And That, and I'm going to want to make the case that it's about the same thing that's going on when, as you just described, Carol, in a chant, that you have to give yourself all to the chant. So what is going on here? What connection can you make? Yeah, Mary Rita.
For me, it's like it's opening up more to the spaciousness and what I understand to spaciousness, rather than it opens me to that spacious mind or that spacious existence, rather than to be in that narrow place.
Okay, and what happens there?
Well, there's a oneness that happens there.
Okay.
The other like the ordinary kind of just falls away.
Beautiful. And I'm actually reaching for something a little different. That what happens when we yeah, go ahead, Deborah. Because we can't live in oneness all the time. That's why, right? That's when you Ratz. But if we want to return, there's some work to do. And that work can only be done if we leave our parents' house, which means the conformity of how other people see us, and which I mentioned this afternoon, which a couple of weeks ago, it might have been last week, the prompts that I gave in the breakthrough rooms about how do you see yourself, how do others see you, and how does God see you, right? You can't break out of how others see you, right? Until you move, until you get going, right? Until you break on the Doors sang it, break on through to the other side, right? What is the other side? The other side is the side of where discovery is possible. That breaks through your limited understanding of our capacity, of our potential. So I think that is something that's going on too in Lech Lecha, is that Abraham can't do that at home. Right? He can't be a great leader until he gets out from his, father's house. Right? He can't be a model until he leaves his narrow view of himself.
He steps into his authenticity.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're in the next chapter with Rami.
Absolutely.
And that sense of stepping into the uniqueness of who he really is.
Great. So, Ratz Fashov, my friends. Take that into your spiritual practice. Yeah, Linda.
So everything being discussed seems to start from a place of purposeful intention. And I was thinking more along the lines, I don't know that I can sit down and set a goal for myself and say, this is what I want to meditate on. I may make the statement, but to me, it seemed more like a dreamlike state. To wake up with a sense of change, to wake up with a sense of wanting something to be different. So if you go back to some of that language, that it seemed more, it can be said that God came to Avram in a dream and said, you have to go. And he woke up and said, okay, we're leaving. Was it a real conversation?
And so, yes, if that works for you in terms of going in without an intention, but knowing that it's going to be good and there'll be a blessing on the other side.
For most of us, it's a little safer that way.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, because in my experience, the most important lessons, the biggest gifts happen when we are not safe. When we're taking a great risk, right? Whether it be in our, well, there's many examples we can give, but just thinking back in your life, I'm sure each of us can give an example of taking a great risk and the payoff being measured, in kind to that, right? So breaking through, not taking everything for granted. Like if you're chanting, Carol's talking about chanting because she's a chant leader. If sometimes if I'm by myself, in my house, I'll start mumbling speaking in tongues, right? I'll take a pasuk and then I'll turn it inside out, and I just want to see where it's going to take me. And so in that way, I'm breaking patterns, and that's part of it too, breaking old patterns and just playing with things, right? You know, if we would all be running around naked in the sand on the beach in Tel Aviv, like my 2-year-old grandson, right? Because it feels damn good. But we're not going to do that because society says no. Right? But in the creative life, we have to say yes. Yes to what is calling us in that way. All right, let's move on. Deborah, do you want to help us transition?
Well, I just wanted to say that even when we leave, we still, it's that expression of everywhere you go, there you are.
Mhm.
So when you leave, you are still carrying all that family baggage, all that stuff. And so it's not even only the physical part of leaving, then there's all the other work on all the other levels to actually leave too.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that helps you transition or not, but
No, but it was a terrific statement. A terrific comment. Thank you. All righty, my friends. Let's turn to the bottom of page 6, just as I think we read it last week, but it's going to lead us into the bottom of page 7. And this, again, is a wonderful testimony to Reb Rami of how deeply ecumenical this statement, this book, this treatise is in turning to other religious, traditions. So Jesus is talking about the same thing in the gospel according to John. Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father and we'll be satisfied." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still don't know me?" Where it's like, Stace, don't you get it? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, right? So what comes to mind for me there is, well, actually, before I tell you what comes to mind, Bruce, just kind of call on you for a moment. What's your takeaway? What's a traditional Christian understanding of this? And what might be a more spacious understanding of this?
I'm glad you asked it with both questions, because a traditional Christian understanding of that would be that Jesus is the only one, that Jesus is the Son of God and there are no others. But a spacious understanding, which is a much more beautiful understanding, is that this man, Jesus, had embedded within him and was aware of that oneness and the isness of life. And so what he is trying to teach to his disciples by example and also in words is to wake up, guys. Just wake up. And just don't see me as a man by the name of Jesus, but see me as another person who has the wisdom of God, just like you do. But how do you find it? And that's what Jesus is trying to teach, in my mind, and that's the spaciousness of Christianity, which then becomes not embedded, but then becomes all the mystical aspects of every walk of life. And in my mind, that's who Jesus was, and perhaps is.
Thank you, Bruce.
He's an example.
Yeah, so I'm reminded, for any of you who are interested in a spacious daily understanding of the gospel, you want to subscribe to Richard Rohr's daily missive that'll arrive in your inbox. Richard Rohr is the head of the Center for Action and Contemplation, and I would say he's he walks with Reb Zalman, in their understanding of exactly what Bruce just talked about, as far as the spacious understanding of us all being in the image of likeness of God. Some people, when they ask me if about the Messiah, and do you think the Messiah will come, right? I say, yeah, that Messiah has come, is coming, and will be coming in every child that's ever born, because every child reminds us of the image of likeness of God. If we can all, and it's much easier to look at a child in that way than to look at each other, right? So at the bottom of page 7, 3 lines down, the world is integral and interdependent. And I think that's too what Jesus is saying here in the Gospel of John. And to use the words of Isaiah, of Yeshayahu, Hanavi, Maloch ha'aretz kavodo, the whole world is filled with God's glory, meaning that there's nothing that is not God, right? You're God, I'm God. Everything is a manifestation of divinity. All righty. So looking now at one of Jesus's colleagues on page 8, and I'm talking about Hillel. You know, they lived at the same time. And Hillel, Jesus could very well have been a disciple of Hillel. Remember, Hillel said, what is hateful for you, do not do to others. Jesus takes that and makes it into a positive statement, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, as opposed to whatever is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor, right? So they lived at the same time. Jesus is reading all the same texts. He's davening in the same shul, right? He gets called up to Aliyot. And here again is a beautiful way to understand Hillel's famous statement, right? Im ein ani li mili. If I am not, right? If I am not for myself, who will be for me? So what is that? That's narrow mind. That's moachin de katnut, right? Because that's the place for ego, which is not a bad place to be, but he says the problem arises only when taking care of yourself is done at the expense of others. And we know people like that, right? Spacious mind, right? Speaks to the second half of Hillel's aphorism. If I'm only for myself, what am I? Because without spacious mind, you live a fearful, anxious, alienated, and you feel like it's separate. It's a life of separation. Right? All righty. Turning to page 9. I think we touched on this last week. Oh, just a little while ago. Behold the image and likeness of God. And that each of us has an angel, dancing in front of us, probably whistling a happy tune and declaring that truth. Judy, hi, Judy. Judy, you missed it. I gave a teaching in your zechut, Judy, in your behalf.
Thank you. I'm honored.
On Ratz V'Shov.
I'm telling you, I can't get away from that this week. It's everywhere.
Judy wrote to me like twice saying like, wait a second, ever since you brought that up last week, I'm seeing it here and I'm seeing it there. So you inspired me to teach a little bit more about that, Judy. You'll have to go look at the.
Well, I'm going to listen to the recording, but okay. I did want to check in since I'm here now.
Great. So what does he say at the bottom of the page on page 9? I used this exercise during my daily prayer walk. And I think I shared with you that this was part of I think it's what got me through my rabbinical, my rabbinical studies was this book, because it just calmed me down in the morning when I went for my morning walk. I begin with chanting the 13 attributes to awaken myself to the presence of God within, with and as all reality. So it's exactly what we're just saying. What Jesus said, what Hillel said, that saying these words as an intention to just ground. And then I visualize myself as Yud He Vav He. So as actually seeing the letters inscribed in us, kind of like a pen and pencil drawing, hearing my angel reminding me of my true nature as God manifest. right? We are all God manifest in time and space. Then I open myself a bit wider. So he's going from a place of contemplation. And because he doesn't want to cross the street and not see that car coming, I open myself up a bit wider and see everything else as a manifestation as well. The trees, the crows, squirrels, everything I meet, animate and inanimate, I see and experience as God. And as God, as my witness, doing this would bring me to tears on occasion. That during my walk, when I opened my eyes, and metaphorically, when my eyes opened, when I awakened, like you were saying, Linda, being more awake, it would be almost overwhelming. And the grandeur of that tree in front of me. And there were times when I did hug that tree. And it felt so great, and it felt so silly, and it felt so liberating, and it felt so childlike, right? It felt like how I want to live. All of this done effortlessly. Devadanya Clipper sent me a gift a number of months ago called The Ways of Effortless Mindfulness. It's one of those books that you pick up on any page, you can read a paragraph, and you got enough to work with on that particular day. I'm just opened up to this. Can you let go of referring to thought for a moment and feel just being here now? The feeling of I am, or being that is independent of I am this or I am that. So that is like an invitation into, then he follows that up with awareness is being awake to the I amness, the isness of you, right? And rather than be pigeonholed by where we're born and living in, we have to leave our father's house, before we begin to understand who we are as made and what are you in God's image and what our unique mission is in this lifetime, as Reb Zalman of blessed memory reminds us in Modeh Ani, Rabba Amoratecha, the great faith in me to be what you dreamt me to be in this lifetime. Okay, we're going to move on to the next chapter, starting on page 11. Oh, I'm sorry, I lied. Last paragraph on page 10, which I have to read because I'm a gardener, and this means a lot to me. So he's talking about practicing the visualizations exercises daily, right? Going for a walk, image of, likeness of, narrow mind, expansive mind, listening for your angel, announcing your true nature. And then he says in the fourth line from the bottom, in time, you will break up the hard-packed soil of narrow mind and plant in it the seeds of loving kindness that will soon grow and awaken in you the spacious mind that is your holy and most true self. So I don't know if you're gardeners out there, but you know how hard the ground is in the late winter, early spring, and how hard it is to break up that ground, and how you got to be patient to plant. All right. So any spiritual practice, whatever it is that you're doing, and if you don't have one, please, if you would like one, and have no idea where to start, there's a lot of very wise people in this room. You can call me, but there are other people as well who have practices. These practices take patience, savlanut, right? It takes patience to see, to watch, first of all, to wait, to plant the seeds, to break up the ground. And so if you meditate for like a beginner meditation practice and a month goes by, you're supposed to give 30 days before you give up, 30 days a chance. Some say 40. But you come out of the time and say, I can't do that. That's like my mind keeps wandering. But maybe you need to go where the mind is wandering and pay attention to where you go. And so there are ways to manage that and ways to sit with that. And at the same time, patience is a part of it too. And even for us who are experienced meditators, we don't meditate to become better meditators. We meditate in order for what Linda was talking about to happen, right? To go into a place of calm, into a place of centeredness, a place of quiet. So if we're so blessed, we hear that still small voice. And then when we come out of the meditation, our mind remembers it, and then we integrate it into our lives. Reb Zalman would encourage us, and I took this on a while back, is to have a piece of paper, a notebook handy when we meditate, and not to wait till the end when something comes up. You have an awakening, write it down, because after a while, it won't be any problem. It's like for those of us, I'm sorry if you don't have my ability to fall back to sleep, but I can go right back into my meditation, into a deep place, soon after writing things down, without, without having my attention taken away. But when I come out of it, then if I wrote several things down, because I write them down because I want to use them. And it's kind of like a spiritual diary, but you don't have to do it that way. You can wait until the end, like at the end of the chant, as Carol was talking. Dan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just had a question, which was in the middle paragraph on that page 10, at the end. I do not equate any of this with mystical experience or, God forbid, enlightenment. This is simply a palpable encounter with God in and as all things. I would have thought this was a mystical experience. I'm now confused about the difference.
Dan, write it down. I think that's a great question to ask Reb Rami.
Okay.
So that's something we all should do now until December 15th. A question comes up that you want to ask the source. Judy weren't here, but Reb Rami Shapiro is going to be with us on December 15th as we approach the end of the unpacking of his book. He was delighted that we're doing it. So that's a great question. I don't want to answer it. Let's see, maybe you'll come up with your own answer. And maybe others have answers to it, but let's let that lay. I think that's a good place to not give an opinion on. All righty, chapter 2, El, Adonai, Adonai, El. That just reminded me of my family's practice at the Seder table. I'm sure many of you do that at the same time, right? What's the first word? Or Kadesh, and then you stop at where you left off. Does anybody do that? Wherever you left off in the Seder, you stop there, Judy, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So right, exactly, you stop. So I just did that. Adonai, Adonai, El. All righty, El. He is certainly taking this in a direction that you never could have imagined. And he mentions in the first line, Matthew Fox, who I referred to before. God as a creative force, El. True creativity flows the human heart from the divine heart, says Matthew Fox in Creativity. So we are now going to take a look at God as creator and how that manifests in our life and in this world. A fifth line from the bottom, creativity is the way God is you in time and space. It is the way you are godly as well. So it's coming from both directions. If God created us, right, then we are God. We are the fractal. We're a chip off the old block, right? And then so we are God. I think I said it before. We are God manifest in time and space. I probably got it from Rami. And in this way, you are godly as well. So they're in the likeness of God. manifesting all of those midot, those characteristics of God. How he's not talking about drawing or painting and creativity in that manner. What is he talking about? Next page, page 12. 3, 6, 7 lines from the top. Creativity is the breaking down of all you know so that the new, the unknown may emerge. Is the breaking down of all you know so that the new, the unknown may emerge. It's as if Rodin is chipping away at the marble to reveal the real us inside, right? So everything breaks down when we break out of our comfort zone, when we break out of our limited understanding of ourselves, and then, creativity can happen. Creativity in the third paragraph then is paradoxical because it relies on your own uniqueness while at the same time eliminating the ego that knows itself to be unique. Right? In other words, it is you and all your uniqueness. I can't be you. I don't want to be you. I just want to be me. I want to be me. Who else can I be but what I am? Every time I get a smile from Judy, I know I'm on the right track. I know all the words to that song. I'm not going to sing it. But what happens is that when we create, do we zone out or do we zone in? Right? Does everything get stripped? No, when if you're not talking about creating art, perhaps he's talking about creating life, right? Living our lives in a creative manner, right? According to our uniqueness. And when we break out of our habitual behavior, we can live as what has been chipped away at and that Rodin has revealed underneath it and gives way to recognizing our uniqueness. I can do that. I'm capable of that. I'm beautiful. I'm capable. Bruce.
Isn't that why God called Abram out of his home to leave the nest so that he could break down all that he knew so that the new and the unknown might emerge?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. But thank you connecting it back to the Torah portion. You are unique. You're an original. But you're not the only original. Because everybody in this room, you too are originals, right? No one sings like Roxanne. No one leads, no one presides over a wedding like Gail. No one listens to jazz like Ellie. No one leads a chant circle like Carol. What's your uniqueness? No one has Jay's sense of humor, right? No one asks the questions that Dan asks. No one has the quiet regalness as Susan. If I left you out, please, it's not because I wouldn't want to say something about you. Bottom of the page, page 12. Many of you know that I worked for a theater company called Living Stage when I moved to Washington from 1979 to 1986. What Martin Buber says here is exactly what our mission was and our ethos. Every person born into this world represents something new, something that never existed before, something original and unique. You are a total, that's the end of his quote. right? The theater company that I probably have not told most of you here was dedicated to creating spaces that would allow the people we worked with to experience this themselves as a creative being, imatatio or Dios, right? We would not have said that in the theater company, but it's how I understand it now. Right? And that each person's gift is different from everybody else's gift. The fact that we all don't know that we have a gift is a crime. Right? And that should be something that every spiritual tradition should be opening, should be a basic teaching. Right? Yes, we are all called children of God. Well, what does that mean? I think Reb Rami is talking about that here. Right? And my father is your father. Top of page. Yeah. Ruben. Yeah. Page 13, according to Buber. Middle paragraph. According to Buber, it is the lack of personal creativity that keeps the Messianic age from unfolding. Wow. Why? Because without creativity and the personal authenticity that comes with it, loving kindness, the hall of the Messianic age, is impossible. If you engage the world from a fixed model rooted in the past, you live by imitation. You undermine your own sense of purpose. And while you may avoid doing bad, you may even do some good. The gift of your full potential will never actualize. Think of great artists like Lady Day, Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, right? Think of Martha Graham and Alvin Ailey. Think of Rodin, think of Renoir, think of Matisse, think of, Da Vinci. But then think of your mother, think of your father, think of someone you know who through the very act of living makes this world, paints this world a more beautiful place, right? Those acts of kindness bring this messianic consciousness closer. This is why Zushya was crying on his deathbed. Next paragraph. This is a very, very famous story. I got it from the Talmud. In the world to come, well, actually, this leaves a little bit out. His students come to him, he's crying, he's on his deathbed. Why are you crying, my teacher? But he can barely get any words out. So are you crying because you were as great as Moshe? No. And then they give a couple of examples. You're crying because you didn't demonstrate the hachnasat orchim, welcoming the stranger like Abraham. No. So why are you so upset? And so what does he say? He says, I'm crying because in the world to come, I'm not going to be asked why I wasn't like Moses or Abraham. I'm going to be asked why I wasn't myself. So this is the way, this is the Tao, right? To getting a little bit closer to tasting that, right? It's not easy to do, to have a practice. And this book is full of practices. But believe you me, reading about it will not get a taste. It'll only give you the idea. Lech Lecha, page 14. So here we are. He brings us right to this week's Parsha. It usually translated Lech Lecha, fourth line, go forth, but actually means, right, as Carol pointed out before, walk toward yourself. God wants Abram to go somewhere in time or space. Yes, that's a standard translation. But the text is ambiguous. Right? Let's go to the next quote from Rabbi Jesus, bottom of page 14. If you bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. And I want to open up the room to anyone who would like to offer how that resonates with you. What is he teaching? Let's read it again. If you bring forth that which is within you, chipping away, right? That which is within you will save you. Yeshua. Ana Adonai Hoshiana. Save us. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. How do we understand that? Deborah.
Well, if we look at ourselves as integrated mind, body, spirit, then if you're suppressing, our health depends on not suppressing parts of ourselves. And so a lot of illnesses, a lot of diseases are a result of certain types of behaviors, of certain types of suppression, and not allowing our true selves to come out.
So we thank you, Deborah. We toss around that expression, our true selves. I want to offer a different possibility of what that might mean. The child within. The child within that's been waiting to reemerge after it was forced, he was forced into her shell so long ago. The child that wants to run naked on the beach in Tel Aviv. The child that wants to put the hand in the mud and the hand and just paint the side of the house. The child that wants to sit by the ants on the sidewalk and observe them and crack up because it's so delightful, right? The child that finds awe in everything because everything is new and fresh without boundaries. There's no boundaries. Anybody else? What does this mean? Yeah, Jay.
Either your true nature is going to surface itself one way or the other, either constructively, with your working together with it, and you're suppressing it, it can come out destructively to yourself and those around you.
Absolutely. How many of us have in our lifetime or know people who live life of regret, right? And live a life where they just know something else was possible, but don't even know what that was because they didn't have the support, or they didn't have the emotional capacity or intellectual capacity, right? Or they didn't have the encouragement. Okay. But yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of frightening, Jay, that which, if you do bring it forth, that which is within you, it'll destroy you. That's kind of frightening. But look at the first part of the, yeah, Caroline? And we're going to come in for a landing in a moment.
Well, I was thinking of people who I know who worked in jobs all their many years of career because they were waiting for retirement. And I know a particular case of a man who retired, and the day after he retired, he died at NIH. He was supposed to have his retirement party. He never made it. But, lived with a lot of counting the days so he could be free to do what he wanted to do or she wanted to do. And then, suppressed the real desire to be a photographer or to travel the world in some other capacity other than be a take a desk job. That is suppressing your creative bent and destroying yourself, essentially.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. We are all blessed, all of us here together, because we all know that there is something within, right, that needs to be liberated. And many of us that, the liberation doesn't come, it's a constant process of running and returning, of running and returning, Ratz v'shov, right? You don't get it and then stay in the got it state. You get it and then you forget, then you forget it. That was good. I might have to look back on the recording and quote myself. I think I ever said that before, right? So then we forget it and then we have to re-get it. Got it? Good. And the other part of this is that I just want to point out, if my understanding of being saved, when we say God save us, right? Ana Adonai Hoshiana. In English, like, come on, admit it. You don't think about that when you daven that. Especially in Hebrew, we're just davening words that, some of us, okay, we understand a little bit, maybe we've done a little bit of study, but really, God save us? Am I hanging by the thread somehow? Well, maybe I am, metaphorically and really. But maybe it means, God, do the work. If I meet you halfway, let's do the work together of chipping away of all of my understanding of what's normal and help me be daring and adventurous and all of the things that'll help me see with eyes anew and awaken to that which is already inside that I'm not even like anywhere nearly fully aware of, right? So to be saved, that's a whole other concept that comes out of here. Jay, go ahead. And then
just going back to loving kindness and the quotes, semi-quotes saying, if you love yourself, set yourself free. If you love somebody and if you love yourself, let yourself be free of the constraints of your parents, of your beliefs, and let your true self come out.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, you also said about letting somebody else, right? Yeah,
the other as well.
So it reminds me of the Sting song.
Yes, exactly.
If you love somebody, set them free,
including yourself.
So what's going on there? And I'll give you the quick. And I think I've shared this before. Why does Tanakh? Why is the most oft avera of sin that is pointed out? Don't do this. What is the biggest don't do this in all of Bible? And then, of course, the prophets are all about this. What is it that we're not supposed to do? Elliot.
Engage in abomination.
Yeah, which is what?
Worshipping idolatry and debauchery.
Exactly. And worshiping idols. So what's an idol? An idol is something that's fixed in stone, that doesn't change. God is not fixed. God self-reveals to Moshe as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I shall be what I shall be. I am becoming. And so you should, if we're made in the image of God, you too shall. You becoming. And when you get caught in the narrow mind, then you only see others and maybe more important yourself in a limiting manner. And then, oh boy, then we're in trouble. Then we're unhappy, and then we're anxious, and then we're fearful. And then Mary Rita's going to give us a great way for a Chatima.
So I think that, first of all, this quote of Jesus comes from the Gospel of Thomas, which is an extra canonical source, which really excites me because it's a saying that is not familiar. And it's a saying that Rami pairs with go to yourself. So I love the last sentence on page 12. To honor your true identity of God, you must be true to your own face. And Reb Shefa has a tremendous chant that's called True Face. So I really invite people to go to our website and just put in True Face, because it's really, this is Susha, and that's loving kindness that Jay was talking about. That is like, if we don't bring forth that true face, then we're going to destroy, really, we're destroying the God in us, and that's who we're called to live. So true faith that we have to live, and that is the way we walk toward ourselves.
Thank you so, so much, Mary Rita.
Thank you, Jesus. You know, you're not in the regular Gospels.
I think this quote, which was from the Reliving Stage script, speaks to Abraham and speaks to our challenge. And our challenge to live in spacious mind, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best day and night to make you like everybody else, means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best day and night to make you like everyone else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting.